not every business owner wants to go cold turkey and play golf 7 days a week. Some do, which is fine. They've got an option if they want to do that, and it's not us. Maybe they step back after 6 months, they're down to 4 days a week or 3 days a week and then 2 days a week. Ultimately, a lot of business owners, that's a comfortable way to do it. They're also still getting dividends during that time based on the shareholding. Say it's 25% a year over 4 years, that's still going to be 100%, 75, 50. So someone talented's growing the business, they're in the business as well, but ultimately, they should be able to get a great return through capital payments and continue to get dividends.
So what is it that you do, Mike?
What we do is we call it business owner transition. So we're all about finding talented, capable people that will come into a business. We use an executive search model to find those sort of people. They come in, they've got capability and they've got capital and they're compatible with the owner, and they look to do a transition with the owner over time. So rather than the owner exiting straight away, the business owner exits over a period, maybe 3 to 4 years.
That's going to be, there's a few art, there's a real art in there. One, how do you find executives? And then two, how do you find executives that will get along with them? Like, do you put them on a dinner together with a candlelight? Like, how do you facilitate a meaningful connection?
Well, you're right about the dinner because that's part of the process.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But, effectively we've got an extensive database of people that have looked at other opportunities over time. We have a search manager who looks through LinkedIn looking for people, when we have an assignment, looking for people that fit the profile that we're looking for, the skill set and that sort of thing. We promote it via LinkedIn. We email our database as well, headhunt. So it's a combination of things. But certainly that compatibility thing is a really key thing in what we do. Talent and capability, we sort of call it the 3 C's. We've got to find someone with capability, capital, and compatibility. And certainly part of the process when an owner's looking to select someone that we put forward is we suggest they take them and their partner out for dinner or lunch, as part of the process. We had an owner just recently took 3 separate people that were looking at the business and their wives out to dinner 3 separate nights as part of that compatibility feel type thing.
That's interesting. So I used to do commission-only sales management, and we found that the number one reason people would quit is because of what they went home to, and what that person thought of the role that they're in. Which is interesting that you incorporate the partner. So what was the rationale in terms of bringing partners along? Well,
we found also that there was 2 things really. Partners are critical to the decision, especially when someone's, say, making the break from having a corporate career. There's some risk element when you're starting to go into a smaller business and perhaps buying into it over time. So the partners have got a real say in that, obviously, whether they're helping in that business or not.
Yeah.
So we need to get them involved. Often when we're meeting the candidate, effectively, we're meeting them and their partner as well. So we want to get a feel, for the commitment of their partner to the new journey,
Sorry, that was fundamentally, you got to have the decision makers there, and they're both decision makers.
Both decision makers for sure.
I just thought this was different because it's business, but obviously it's not.
But we learn all that from trial and error. We got to realise that, how important the partner was in the decision, and so we've sort of modelled or evolved our process to sort of incorporate that.
Do you find people that buy businesses or want to come into your model are business owners before, or that you're pulling them from corporate gigs, or do you see a trend?
Most of them are from in corporate businesses. They've kind of been in those businesses for a while. They've been successful, and they've thought, well, I want some skin in the game, really, and that's where they're coming from. When we tell them about our model, they think, this is perhaps a de-risked way of getting into a business, as opposed to, going to a business broker and buying a business outright, where you've got to put all the money on, down and hope that it works out.
So you're like the Tinder of Kira.
Yeah.
You're Tinder of business.
Yeah, a bit like that. I mean, I guess the key thing for us is the, in a transition, is getting the right person and getting the fit. It's not so important in a straight situation where someone goes into a business outright and the owner leaves, at the end of the day, that doesn't matter so much, but certainly does. This person's going to be a business partner with the owner for a number of years. They've got to be able to work together.
It's a fascinating model. I hadn't heard of it, to be honest. It makes sense, especially in our industry, succession planning. Essentially, any new staff member is an overhead, which normally in other professions, you could justify it because they're adding value, but they're bringing in a financial advisor that's not going to make any money for 5 years potentially until they get their funds under management that could be sufficient to cover the cost of having them on. So there's a real need for succession plan, and they obviously don't want to give up their personal income to help grow their practice.
Yep.
So what's the actual... So someone comes in, they've gone through the heavy screening, they've gone through the headhunting, they've had their little lunch together, and they're like, you know what, this is good. Do you draw up agreements to, a set period of time, or is it they could bail 3 months in, or how do you make it a worthwhile endeavor?
Yeah. Well, firstly, it's the first part is a search/recruitment type exercise. So, let's say the person goes in, they'll have an employment contract like anyone else, and sort of a document of intent to say, hey, look, in 6 months' time, we'll, I'm going to, acquire 25% of the business at X price. So, really, but during that 6 month period, they're validating their DD, and yes, they can pull out, or yes, the owner can decide to change it. But it's really important to make sure things work out right. After that, we leave it to the lawyers and the accountants to do the to do the rest of the stuff. That's we're pretty much finding that key person, putting the structure and process in place to make it work, and then the professional people do the
boring stuff,
do the paperwork.
The important stuff.
Yeah, I mean the other factor on that, what makes it work over, is that we meet once a month in that first 6 months with the owner and the incoming person. Really, we call it a transition planning board. It's really just to make sure that things are working towards the plan at 6 months, that the transition's working well, the owner's treating the person like a future owner, not an employee, and, allowing some sort of decision making, which is another reason why the key thing we do is before we take a business on, we assess the owner. The owner's got to be right too. The owner's got to be prepared to work for to have a business partner on board, and work with that person. If they're not, the best thing they can do is just go to a business broker they know and sell their business. But because that's not what we do.
Do you find the people that want your services are more invested in the outcome of the client, hence why they're doing it, or they're hard to let it go and they just want reassurance that someone's there for them? What is their reason? The reason,
of the person, of the owner or the person coming in?
The owner. So let's say the owner wants to take someone on board.
Yeah.
They could just sell the business and be out with it.
Yeah.
But obviously they're transitioning.
Yeah.
So there's some motivation to transition.
The motivation, I think, not every business owner wants to go cold turkey and play golf 7 days a week. They some do, which is fine. They've got an option if they want to do that, and it's not us. But if they want to, over time, start stepping back, maybe they step back after 6 months, they're down to 4 days a week or 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week, and or whatever. Maybe in the third year they're just turning up for the board meeting once a month. So ultimately, a lot of business owners, that's a comfortable way to do it. They're also still getting dividends during that time based on the shareholding. So say it's 25% a year over 4 years, that's still going to be 100%, 75, 50. So someone talented's growing the business. They're in the business as well, providing help in their knowledge. But ultimately, they should be able to get a great return through capital payments and continue to get dividends.
Gotcha. So in essence, it's income and lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with that. It's like the hardest thing with financial planning isn't the financial component. It's what you're going to do. You're retired now.
Yeah.
What are you going to
do? Well, and again, that's another interesting point, because we ask owners, hey, when you spend less time in the business, what are you going to do? And some of them, don't really have a plan because the business perhaps has been their life. One thing, though, that just about all of them have is a concern for their legacy. They want to see whatever happens when someone comes in, they want to see it being successful. Whether they go through us on a transition or they exit straight away with someone else, they want to see their business successful.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, it invests so much, and it's not too dissimilar to a child in a way. You help raise it. They got to a certain point, you're invested in it, and then you've got long-term relationships. If you're a point where you're like exiting, you'd imagine. So, what do they pay them, like a salary or wage or commission, or does it vary? Or
the people coming in get paid a paid a salary. They're coming in as generally as the GM type thing, so they get paid a salary. It may not be as much as they were getting in the corporate space, because at the end of the day, they're also going to be a shareholder over time, and they're going to be getting dividends through that. So they've got to come in with the motivation. It's not about the salary. It's about growing the business, having some skin in the game, getting some dividends, and eventually when their turn comes, they've got an exit strategy and hopefully build up an asset worth something.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, because a lot of people have trepidation about going on their own. You're buying a business based on some level of due diligence, but not much. You're just sort of winging it.
Yeah.
You're hoping it's going to be well. And then, in terms of the owner that has it, they've got potentially a great employee, worst case scenario, for a period of time. And then it'll probably be emotionally challenging that you're invested and they leave. But that's business. It's a reality. You hire good people do good things. It might not be with you.
Well, if we get it right, it'll work, and they won't. And if the owner plays their part as well, and treats that person, like an incoming person, make sure that there's no skeletons in the closet, because they're going to find them in the first 6 months. If there's some skeletons in the closet. And I guess the reassurance for the person coming in too is the owner's prepared to stay in the business for a number of years. Therefore, they must believe in their business. If they didn't, they wouldn't do that. They'd want to get out quickly.
You've got some horror story. Have you got, let's say, some owners, some interesting businesses?
Yeah.
Have you got any stories like that, whether they're not necessarily clients, but like business owners that were doing some shifty things or sweeping things under the rug, or they were misrepresenting what the business actually was in the next minute?
To be honest, we haven't really had anything like that. What's happened is sometimes people coming in have found things, that perhaps were a little bit different. Like, say, I don't know, the contracts were for a period. They might find out the contract wasn't as the relationship with the contract wasn't quite as tight as they'd hoped. That sort of thing. And it's like any time when you're getting into a business, when there's agreements in place, whether it be agencies, the key thing is working out how strong are those relationships. And, a person who's exiting their business, is going to think they're going to continue forever. But we all know some of those sometimes don't. The beauty of it is, though, that the owner's still there, so relationships get handed out over time. It's not like someone's leaving. We've heard stories when someone's exited their business and done a straight sale, and sometimes those contracts may not be as tight as you think.
Oh yeah, that's tough.
But that's the risk you take, and I guess under our model of transition, that risk is mitigated because the owner's still there.
Yeah, I can see it solving a problem. It's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing to sell, because essentially you're convincing people. So fundamentally, you've got these people that are in their cushy job. Maybe they don't like corporate because, they don't have the freedom and they feel confined as individuals.
Yeah.
Me and corporate don't get along. But then you're like, hey, come over to this other thing, even though you've been very successful the last 20 years in that. How do you, is it like a reaching out on LinkedIn? Do you have to get rejected 1,000 times to find one candidate? Like how, let's say if we reverse this model and someone wanted to find their own executive, how would they go about it?
Well, there'll be an element of trial through us, of course, but there'll be an element of trial and error. At the end of the day, because we've done a lot of jobs over the last 5 or 6 years, particularly, we've only one person can get each opportunity. So there's quite a pool of people that we know that are looking for this sort of thing. So we know those people to start with now. We have them categorised in our database. But on the reaching out bit and the headhunting, we get people that it's not for them. We also get people that think it's for them, and then they realise through the process that it's not for them. I think everyone's got a sort of propensity for risk. There's a different risk requirement if you do a startup, then plump all your money in. That's a risky, or buy an existing business outright. Buying it over time, there's still a risk, but it's not as risky as starting your own business or forking out 2 or 3 million up front. It's less risk. So, and corporates probably, a lot of these corporates we talk, they'd never start up a business by themselves. They'd probably never pay 2 or 3 million and buy one straight out. But the thought of getting into a business over time, it fits with their risk profile.
Yeah.
A bit more.
I mean, it's smart. Did this evolve? Like, how did the business start? Or what was your first business? Maybe we should go to that.
The business started, actually, my business partner, Rob, he had an executive search business. So it came out of executive search. And, he realised, and he was talking to some business owners who's putting GMs into some of these businesses. And they'd come to him, sometimes a year later saying, oh, yeah, John, he's doing really, really well. But, I wanted him buy to sort of take shares in the business, but he hasn't got any money. Well, okay, and the answer is, well, you didn't tell us that right in the beginning, because otherwise we would have looked to someone with capability and some capital as well. So we sort of found a bit of a gap in this sort of executive search market, effectively, for finding people to go into businesses where the owner was contemplating, succession. So ultimately, the model evolved over time from that. And, we've tweaked it, changed it. I came on in 2016, 17 and as a full-time. And we just kind of, Rob and I have just evolved it over that period to where it is now.
It's a concept of minimal viable product. Like I was saying off air, like starting this marketing company, the strategy has changed 20 different times. Over just a few months. It's just iterations. It's like, here's my okay product that sort of makes sense. And then where it started to where it's at, I'm like, okay, well, that was not what I expected.
Exactly. It's like when before I was into this, I had a corporate career, sales and marketing director at various companies here in Australia. And ultimately, way back, you used to do a marketing plan at the beginning of the year, and that was your blueprint for the whole year. It didn't really change. You ticked off all your boxes. Now it's just, you wouldn't even think of starting a plan and just, not tweaking it and altering it during the year.
Well, it aligns with my way of approaching life. I would travel and not plan. I wouldn't even know where I was until I was there, which is probably not a good way to approach things, but that model of, put it out there and let the market tell you what they need and then adjust as it emerges, and then what you can deliver and what you're good at, and if you can't, partner with someone that can. Yeah. So I like to get a little deep and unpack people's stories and why they do what they do. But you obviously, let's go back to, what city were you born in?
Born in Wellington. So Wellington, born and bred, went to school down there, went to university down there.
What did you study?
I ended up various things, but ended up doing a BA in political science.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So are you going to be running soon, or what are you thinking?
Nah, far from it. So that's what I ended. Then I did a business diploma at Massey after that to sort of round things off.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to be a political, what were you thinking of doing in the political sphere that made you do it? Or you wanted to impress your dad?
No, well, it just happened by chance. I sort of, I think I'd come from boarding school where you sort of had to study in segments, and, you had this time from 7 to 9 at night where you had to study and things like that. So when I got to university, I thought, oh, great, I can just do what I want. So, missed a couple of papers of my BCom in my first year, which meant I couldn't do the second year. So I just sort of changed degrees.
What do you remember? Any learnings from that time?
Well, I think and this is what I do when I look at people, and I have through my corporate career in here. Someone's got a degree, they've applied themselves, they've got some learning. I don't really mind because it becomes less, unless it's a doctor or an engineer or something specific or an accountant. It's less important as you go on. But even if I look at someone I'm looking at for a business who's sort of 45, if they've got some form of degree and qualification 20 years ago, that's just another tick in the box.
Oh yeah.
In my mind.
Well, how much weight would you give it?
I don't give it a massive amount of weight because it's not. But I just look at it. Someone's gone in there. They've applied themselves. They've trained, and they've got something out of it. So it is. It becomes less and less relevant as they get older, but it's still a tick in the box.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's a proof of certain discipline, ability to retain and regurgitate information.
Rote learn. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a bit cold. I've got some studies, but I don't get the social pressure for kids to study if they don't want to pursue that career or that career, because there's other ways for you to get opportunities without having a degree. A degree, if you love it and you're developing your learning and networking, incredible. But just doing it to impress your mum and dad?
Yeah, nah. That wouldn't be the way to do it. I mean, I think really I just went to university. I didn't really know I had no firm idea what I wanted to do. So I went to university and plus, had a good time there as well.
Yeah.
But really, that's the thing. And as you say, a lot of people now, entrepreneurs, there's a lot of young entrepreneurs coming through, and people at the end of the day, they're never going to go to university, but they're going to, a lot of them are still going to be successful.
Yeah, but I would say you don't have to go to university, but you do have to be a learner.
Yep.
I don't think you can avoid that. You can pay $10. There's this thing called Udemy. You pay $10 for a course, and it's like really incredible course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just UDEMY. It's not an affiliate or anything.
Yeah.
But maybe I should ask them for money.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just everything is accessible online, and I think that from a marketing standpoint is okay. You might think you've got IP. You might think you've got the secret sauce, but if you become known as the person that gave it away for free, that's going to have more leverage than you trying to protect the IP someone probably could have Googled. So what did you do after uni? What was your first gig?
First thing after uni, went and did my OE, sort of did the stupid things like you do over there. You run with the bulls and you
never be
have a few beers and do a whole lot of things that you do when you're a 21, 22-year-old. And I came back and I was actually a professional tennis coach. That was my first real job for about 2.5 years, I think, full time down in Wellington. I was a tennis coach. Yeah.
So how do you inspire greatness in tennis players?
Well, I mean, good tennis players are a combination of talent and ability to work hard and attitude. And really, a lot of it's identifying. Some going to have a mix. But but often I found the super talented ones weren't necessarily the best at applying that. So it's just having an eye for it, I guess, and just looking to see who you think could you build on someone with attitude, drive, fight, and teach them something. It's a lot harder if someone's really, really talented, I think, to teach them discipline if they don't kind of have it.
Yeah. What's that quote? Hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard.
Yeah.
So what? I made a mistake early on in training salespeople. Was trying to tell them the technicians how to do the backswing and how to do the serve as opposed to the underlying belief system. Was there work that you did as a coach around that, like around fostering a meaningful attitude, or processes you learnt that encourages this discipline, like consistency each day, or?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. It's sort of in my day, and that's going back quite a few years ago.
You might not even been a good coach.
I guess it would be a lot more sophisticated now on the, like for instance, when I was coaching, there wasn't a lot of time really spent on the mental side. Yeah, there were some books on it and things like that, but it certainly wasn't, that sort of side wasn't the focus as such then as people evolved. But I think it very much is part of it now. But really, consistency and repetition, getting things into your muscle memory, that's a key part of being successful in sports like tennis, you've got to get into the groove so that stroke becomes kind of instinctive and automatic, and you only get that through repetition and consistent practice.
Yeah. All right. I didn't expect the coaching thing, so I just, that's how prepared I am. I was just, who am I talking to? Okay, cool. Let's go.
Yeah. Good.
All right. So tennis coach, and then what? You started going to sales marketing then? Or?
Yeah. I ended up thinking really I wanted to do something else, and I started off in mobile oil.
Oh yeah, the most profitable business in the world.
The graduate recruitment scheme, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. Learned a lot. A lot of courses, a lot of training.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Out in the field. That was in those days. Every single person, no matter who they were in the company, had to spend at least a year or a year and a half out in the field. I mean, we had Harvard graduates come back from America and come over, and they would do their year and a half in the field. It was just fundamental to that business. If you didn't know the customers, how could you do any job in the business was pretty much their attitude.
I mean, like, as I say, the most profitable company in ExxonMobil. What are your thoughts on petrol prices then? Are they like, milking it? Because they made a lot the quarter where supposedly it was challenging.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing in petrol prices is to me is that 91 versus 96 or 95 or 98. At the end of the day, the cost of producing that is very minimally different, if at all. But they get an extra 25-cent margin or whatever it is on the premium fuels, and I think that's they are making really good money, I would think, on those premium fuels, and getting people in to buy the other things they do in the petrol station, which is where they make a lot of their money.
The upsell. Yeah,
but I think as more and more people get European cars, as they've grown, I just think, and they require 95 or 98, I just think that fuels their profit margins.
Huh. Should I be using those ones, or should I go 91?
Oh, it depends on your car, I guess.
Toyota Camry, just a boring old car.
Oh, whatever the manufacturer says. I mean, you get a lot of people say, I can tell the difference between 95 and 98. I can't.
Yeah. All right. Well, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What will you say are the biggest takeaways from, it's obviously doing something really right. What would you say are the principles within that business? One was obviously client-centric, so everyone comes in, has that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, what would you say differentiates them from other businesses you might have seen?
Well, I mean, it was my first real sort of corporate job. I mean, when I went there, people were still smoking in the office.
Oh,
yeah, it was still allowed.
With the petrol nearby?
No, not with the petrol nearby, but an office in Wellington. I'm sitting there, and this 50-year-old guy next to me is sitting there puffing away on his smokes. No special ventilation or anything like that. Yeah. But that was sort of that time. But takeaways, very much the customer-centric thing and the importance of actually people, because as then people went into other roles, whether it was marketing or anything else, they still had interaction with all the dealers so they knew that, they often knew groups of dealers, and it really helped. They understood how they were thinking when they applied it to their jobs. I mean, that was really the key thing. The other thing is they invested in training. I think when we started, we had a 6-week block course of solid training, and in all aspects, trying to learn all aspects of the business, and then ongoing training with courses. And I guess again also they were sort of the forefront of, I had a mobile phone in my car before anyone else I knew. They were the first, any new technology they took.
Makes sense. I mean, that's the hardest thing to maintain in such a large corporate is, innovation and, caring about the client, because you get so far removed from it.
And I think that, going on to that technology thing, I think that's where a lot of the people that we bring into these businesses bring the enabling technology. They understand technology a lot more, say, than the baby boomer business owner who hasn't really enabled technology as much. And we see some quite impressive gains where people come in and, a couple of examples have come in and they've put in, SimPro or Workflow Max, some of these things, and really automated a whole lot of processes that were, in some cases sort of paper-based or Excel spreadsheet-based. They can bring a difference there.
Yeah, well, we had that here. So we're a bit old school. Handwrites his emails.
What's that?
Handwrites his emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the biggest lessons I get from working alongside him was around the client-centric and the personalisation. So he hand delivers all his Christmas cakes.
It's a good idea, though.
Yeah. When you got 250 clients, it's quite an ordeal.
Oh, yeah.
And they're around the country.
Yeah, he does that?
Yeah. Some he doesn't go.
Yeah.
But generally, pretty much all of them.
That's a commitment.
Yeah, and because I always wonder that as a financial advisor, what value do you bring? Like, on one hand, you solve all their financial concerns, but once it's set, you don't have to do much.
Yeah.
But then it's really about reassurance and service and what they deem as something that's valuable.
Yeah.
So it's something I struggle with, but it's something he does very well. And that's the trade-off, anytime you are lacking in a certain competency, you compensate for it in another way.
Yeah.
Okay, so, ExxonMobil, I don't know how you could even do that. Like, let's say, if we were to replicate their model, every new staff member comes in and has to work with, like, customers one-on-one.
Yeah.
That's really...
That's pretty much it, yeah.
I don't know if I could do that. But one thing that is important, I think, is having staff members do different roles, so then they don't blame that role for a certain ability because they understand the challenges and why that person does such a good job.
Yeah.
But anyways, I've talked a lot. ExxonMobil, what happened? Why'd you leave? Or
you had to sort of do your time somewhere. You could be assigned to Invercargill, Northland, Auckland, anywhere. And I got Hamilton. I got the Tron.
Oh, yeah.
So
I know why you left now.
Yeah. Don't like the Chiefs. But no, I just felt I was there for a sort of 15 months, I think, in the field, but I really was sort of getting down to Wellington at every opportunity. And I didn't, I enjoyed my time there, but not so much that I wanted to keep staying there.
Fair. One of the most beautiful cities in New Zealand, apparently. That and Wanganui.
Yeah.
It was voted here. What are your thoughts?
I haven't been in Wanganui for a while, but...
You're more politically...
The Tron, okay. Yeah.
You still want to run for office, so you want the Hamilton vote. I hear you.
Yeah.
I'm from Palmerston North, much worse. So, I'm not being unkind, just being real.
Yeah.
Okay, so you left and then just got into sales and marketing, or how did you start refining what you actually enjoyed?
I actually went at that stage. New Zealand Post had sort of corporatised or whatever, and ceased to be a government department. So they were bringing a lot of people on to do sales and marketing type work to compete with the courier companies and others in a commercial operation. So I was there for a few years doing a variety of roles in sort of account management, sales, then the marketing department. So I went into marketing there as well.
How do you sell? Like, when was this, if you don't mind? Just give or take.
This was the late 80s.
Late 80s. How do you
90s.
market fucking NZ Post? You just cold calling people?
Well, no, it was more. It was companies. We were, obviously, at that stage, companies were starting to get substitute parcels for couriers. So New Zealand Post had a courier company. So a lot of it, I spent some time in that part of it. So we had a company called Courier Post aligned. So one stage I was BDM for that area, so looking to grow that, competing with the DHLs and the Post Haste and New Zealand Couriers and those sort of people. So
how though? Like, how would you bring in business?
Well, you'd have a relationship. The company would have a relationship, and some of these companies would have accounts with New Zealand Post anyway. So you often had an in to get into theirs. You'd do things like do facility management, the bigger mail rooms, because in those times the bigger companies effectively had a mail room
Oh.
This is going back a while.
Yeah, I was.
They had a mail room, with a couple of people in there, and we got into doing things like outsourcing that to us, and certain things, and and obviously getting the courier work as well.
You replaced the poor mailroom people. Yeah. So, every time you came in, people left crying. Is that
Not quite. Maybe we employed them in some cases, True. At the end of the day.
Our mailroom's better, bigger. It's got a smoker room.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're recruiting and selling.
Yeah,
that's where you got all your talent from.
Effectively, yeah. So it was an interesting time there. I enjoyed my time there, and it was the early days of e-commerce as well. So New Zealand Post was starting to get into looking at how do we sort of get involved in that space as well. So
e-commerce. Yeah. How long were you there for? Like what? So the internet came in the 90s?
Yeah, I was there till about 94, I think, 93, 94.
Wow.
So
that's innovative.
That stage, the internet was coming in.
What did you think of it when you saw it?
Amazed, yeah.
You were?
Yeah.
The little magic box, send an email.
From someone who came from the time there was, when I was at university, there were no computers, and no mobile phones when I was in my early 20s. So,
wow,
yeah.
And you had a mobile phone at Mobile?
Yeah, that was sort of 25, I think.
Was it 15 kilos or what?
No, it was a big one set in the car. I remember the bill sometimes was sort of, even back then in the late 80s, was sort of like sometimes 1,000 or 1,500 a month, and the cost of mobile was expensive.
Wow, that's mad back then.
Because there was none of these plans and so much free minutes or anything. It was all you paid X amount per minute, and certainly as I was trolling around the regions, doing trips, you'd be on your phone the whole time, racking up cost.
Wow. Because, trying to do inflation in my head, if inflation was 2%, it'll double in 36 years. So let's say that was, it's $2 to $3 grand now, but inflation was much higher then as well.
Yeah, it's
the 80s was nuts. It was
in
like
those days, mobiles were expensive. Yeah,
it's missed. Yeah, well, makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm talking about important content here. Didn't you realise? So yeah, okay. And then you're with Post, and then there's a gap up until 2016. What were you consistently sales and marketing?
Yeah. I went into the vehicle leasing area with corporates, with a couple of companies, and moved in as marketing manager, then sales and marketing manager for a couple of businesses. And then 2004 went to Australia for a 2-year assignment with a business called Custom Fleet, and went there for 2 years, and ended up getting bought by GE. So I ended up staying. So I was there for about 10 years at the end of the day in Australia.
Well, it sounds like you got quite a repertoire of skills in BDM, or sales and marketing. What would you say your lessons were, either in sales, like you want to foster a relationship in a way that leads to an outcome that's good for them and you?
Yeah.
What would for a young salesperson or established salesperson that's still trying to learn?
Yeah.
What would your advice be to them?
Depends on the product or service that they're selling. If I can relate it to what we're doing with talking to business owners, sometimes you've got to slow it down to speed it up. You can't always rush people on big decisions. You've got to keep providing value. And the other thing I've learned, particularly in the business I'm in now, is don't fire all your shots at the first meeting. You need to get a second meeting and a third meeting. You need to build trust with the client when you're talking like a big decision like their succession. You can't just try and rush it and think it's all about hard sell, because it's not.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, the other thing in all sales, at the end of the day, people, especially when they're starting off, need to be comfortable just picking up the phone and talking to people. If they can't do that, that it's very unlikely they're going to branch out to be a successful person in that area, regardless of the industry.
Yeah, well, Greg says the phone doesn't ring itself.
Yeah, it doesn't, and call reluctance. There's a lot of people out there with call reluctance. And I remember when I was one of my roles, we all got sent on a course. The course was on call reluctance, and we all got a book on a course. It was all about how to avoid, how to minimize call reluctance and the signs to see in, say sales staff you might have who may have that sort of thing. And the key thing, a lot of the thing I learned is some people, over prepare before they make a call. They spend, half an hour researching and looking up this and that and that. They could have made 6 calls and converted 3 of them, but instead they do a whole lot of research, and I could sort of call it over preparedness.
Yeah.
Don't over prepare. Sometimes you've just got to do a bit of research, then pick up the phone.
Yeah, paralysis by analysis. I think nearly every, especially in B2B, nearly every call can be a warm call, because in essence you either got an example there, got their LinkedIn, they made some content, they've got the website, they said something. Maybe you mentioned that you got a coach in tennis.
Yeah.
And you call up and oh, hey Mike, I was just wondering how your server's gotten these days. Yeah. And then it's just you're not a telemarketer immediately.
Yeah.
So what about the marketing side of things? Because, I combine sales as, keeping the lights on, brand is, is building the agriculture and the farm that can support your business for the long term.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your concepts around the marketing? Because your marketing would be more reputation as opposed to brand, because you're more of the relationship component of marketing.
Yeah, well, I think the key thing for us in the marketing is we need to educate. We need to educate people on what we do, because it's a new concept, as you said before. It's quite unique. We need to actually educate. First, it's not like we're going in and selling a service that, like accountant or lawyer, that everyone understands what they do. We're selling a concept that's new. So, our marketing has to be around, we do a lot of blogs and a bit of content all about just trying to educate people rather than sell. And that's why, accountants and advisors and that are now, recommending their clients come to us, because they've heard about us through and heard what we do is a little bit different.
Makes sense. I'll just you did well. There was an alarm there while Mike was talking. Kept his composure. That's years of selling. Do you do events and stuff as well? Because I imagine yours is a bit different, because I was going to say intermediaries is a good opportunity to find the owner.
Yep. Yeah, we do events, and obviously over the last couple of years with COVID, that's kind of events had dried up quite considerably. So we've done some seminars in Christchurch and in Auckland and in Hamilton. We've done them with bankers and their clients. We've partnered with an accounting firm for another one, or a couple of them. So we've done a few of those. We're looking to sort of ramp those up next year, where we can sort of partner with someone, educate, a wider group of people about what we do.
What do you think the 80-20 is? Obviously, you don't have many competitors or any, if you're educating the market, that I know.
Yeah.
What do you have found is the best way to do what you do to bring in clients, and you focus more on that?
Yeah, I mean, we use a mixture. I find with myself and Rob, my business partner, we're getting most of our opportunities come through people referring clients to us, or people hearing about us. And, we're doing email marketing as well, sometimes with some calls to action. We might say, hey, we'll do a transition plan for you for whatever, nothing.
Yeah.
And just try and as a way of, delivering some value. And we consistently educate people on email, because at the end of the day, using something like MailChimp, for example, you can see how often people open and what sort of rating they have in terms of opening your content. So they're a little bit warm. They've opened your content, they've clicked through, and that's when, the licensees we've got around there, they'll, we give people a call, so it's not a cold call.
Yeah,
it's a warm call.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, because I've been formulating the strategy around marketing and B2B, and but fundamentally the issue most people face in marketing is that it is a high cost of acquisition if you're using marketing, And then the other thing is that you're selling a relationship.
Yeah.
You don't have a product that you're offering. And the models that I've seen that are successful around that are around access to relationships you might not have had before.
Yeah.
And I think podcasts and webinars are probably the most effective way that lead to in-person events that have a cost.
Yeah.
And that cost is to recoup the acquisition cost.
Yeah.
So then either it breaks even or it's profitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a perfect world, if you could just have all the money in the world and all the people, how would you market what you do?
Well, I would do a combination of everything. I mean, we do obviously Google ads and SEO, work on SEO to get our ranking up. But I would do some more seminars because I think you can get yourself well known. But I'd do those seminars partnered with, a bank or another brand. Get some of their sort of brand equity washes off on you. If you're partnering or and co-branding something. And again, but I wouldn't discount what some of our people are doing. Just picking up the phone and calling people in our database. That's still quite successful as long as we identify business owners that fall within our strike zone. And it's not very hard to flick on LinkedIn and see someone's profile and say, oh, they look 60. Or look at the company's office and they've had the business for 20 years. Some simple things you can do to make the fact that you make a call, that there's a reasonable likelihood of having a conversation. And I tell you, business owners love to talk. We find when people are doing, say, cold or warm calls, there's always a conversation. No one slams the phone down.
Yeah.
And these business owners, they're not like, say you're a marketing manager at a business, you'll get people ringing up about SEO and Google ads, and you'll get 5 emails a day, which I still get on that.
Yeah, me too.
But you'll be getting phone call after phone call, and you can probably get, potentially some of them get a bit frustrated. Whereas the business owners don't cut us off; they listen. And I think there's a high percentage of business owners looking at succession now. I think when KPMG did a survey, and this was a few years ago, said 40% of the business owners in the medium-sized businesses were looking at succession within the next 5 years. And that was 5 years ago when they did that survey. Now, I reckon if you went back to some of those same people, they've done nothing.
Yeah.
And COVID's probably disrupted them a bit. They still haven't done anything. So I do think there's actually some pent-up demand. I think there's going to be a lot of business owners, a lot more. We're getting a lot more inquiry. But I also think the pool's going to get smaller too. So, over time of people, coming in.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, fundamentally, that a lot of businesses are over it. Yeah, lack of a better word, like, I got this again, but then they just don't have another option, and not another option where they're able to continue what they want to do.
Yeah.
So for you, it's really just identifying a certain person at a point where they're open to hearing your discussion.
Yeah.
Identifying is the hardest part. Getting them there is not that hard, I find, so far. But get the finding who you want.
Yeah.
I've worked that out.
Yeah.
There's
no one answer, I guess. It's a lot of this thing is trial and error, and
well, what I'm trying at the moment, and feel free to steal it. So I go on Sales Navigator. I get all my secondary connections because that's social proof.
Yep.
And I narrow it down to people that are posted in the last 30 days.
Yeah.
The reason that's valuable is because you got an in to call, and then you can interact with their content.
Yeah.
Then I give it to a tool called Phantom, which you can do like a 14-day trial and get everything you need anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you download 1,000 names or whatever, and you can filter by the industry on Sales Navigator who you want to target. And you could do how long they've been in the business. So for you, for example, you could do they've been in the business for over 10 years, so they're more likely to be blah, blah, blah. And then I just pass it off using Fiverr to someone to clean the data and get the phone numbers. So Fiverr is just some person in India or whatever, good with spreadsheets and copying and pasting.
Yeah.
So I paid it off to them. So all of that cost me $130 to do 1,000 names. And I'm just going to call them. And hopefully it works.
Hey, good. Yeah.
We'll see.
I mean, you've narrowed it down. Hey, I've got Sales Navigator, so I'll something I could have a crack at.
Yeah, Phantom. Copy paste it.
Yeah.
Just be mindful not to do it too much because LinkedIn doesn't like automations.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, see how you go.
Yeah.
And we have done 50 minutes. And
jeez, that much.
Yeah, we're rolled, mate. We're rolled.
We have, yeah.
So I think we should extract more value around what what the offering is. So do you notice within businesses, ones that have lasted the sands of time, like certain principles or processes that they had that led them to being in a position to have a succession plan? Do you see common threads?
Yeah, there's a few common threads. I mean, firstly, the ones that have ensured the business doesn't just relate around them and rely on them. That's important for all businesses to sort of ensure that they have, a solid team, of people. A lot of the businesses we deal with, it depends on what sector. I mean, we deal with businesses who turn over 2 million to 20 million. So say on the smaller sector, a lot of them have sort of built up their business based on their reputation. They've done a really good job. They might have, it's an engineering business. They might have started off as an engineer, or a printing business. They start off as a printer. So they've generally started off in their sort of field, and just built it up to where they think they need to build it up. Often, probably professional help they've had as accountants and lawyers. Traditionally, a lot of them haven't maybe gone to advisors or taken professional advice outside of that. So they're generally at a stage where they've built up a good business, a lot of these businesses, but they've got growth potential because it's a bit like, the owner's got the boat, the batch and the BMW. They've got to that stage, and they've got a good income, they've got a nice house, and they've got a batch down in Whangamata. They're comfortable, but there's often a lot more growth, bit of sales, marketing, process, taking more advice, strategy. There's a lot of things that can be done to those businesses too to make them even bigger and better.
What makes and that's probably the skill set that the corporate's got.
Yep.
Because it makes sense, especially around that 2 to 20 mil, that they start off as technicians. They get maybe one part removed, but they're not really managers as such. But so then you have someone come in that has the understanding of the tools and efficiencies and the ability to manage.
Yeah. And
then they potentially can just do the part they enjoyed. Maybe they go back to being the engineer.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. It's exactly how it often works. And we're looking now, I mean, the people that we find, we're looking often for general commercial experience. I mean, we're doing some building companies at the moment, 3, but we're not looking for builders to run them. We're looking for, people with strong commercial experience, relationships. Yeah, they might have come from the wider construction sector. They'll have some sort of knowledge of the sector, but we're not looking for a licensed builder to run the business.
Yeah, I mean, especially in that that industry, most of my life I was a labourer, and then I realised my body's not going to last, so I start using my brain.
Yeah,
I was like, I'd never be in a fucking office. Now I just talk shit and have coffee. So and then I see the guys in the high-vis, I'm like, oof.
Yeah.
But they have joy too. But that industry, it's incredibly hard to have someone that's really good on the tools that can execute and deliver as a technician, then to go up into a leadership position and support and grow. And they tend to cap. They seem to try and remove themselves from the part they did so well, and then they can't reach a certain ceiling of growth because of that. You notice, is that why you what made you fall into the building?
Oh, look, we deal right across different. It just happened that we got some clients in that area, but we've got plenty of clients, across all sorts of, industries from, we've done advertising agency to, wastewater to, body corporate, a whole lot of different types of businesses. We just happen to have a few of those at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, random. And if the person's coming in with the management component, you don't need to know too much. You need to know enough to know you're not going to get ripped off.
Yep.
I think that's important in business if you're not across some level. But in essence, you should be doing what you're good at.
Yep.
All right. Well, now that we're at the hour, who should find you? And it sounds like people, 2 to 20 mil.
Yep.
And how do they find you?
How they find us? Yeah. Well, they can give me a call, or they can look up our website, platform1.co.nz. We've got quite a bit of information on there. They can read up. All our contact details are on there throughout the country, and that's a nice, easy way of reaching us.
Yeah, especially if you got some Google AdWords to sell. Who loves it, though?
Yeah, for sure.
Should I put your number on there?
Yeah, why not?
All right, we'll be in the description, the website and your number.
Excellent.
Thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate having a chat with you.